everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So there is Anna Kiss and I'm Esther Lefort. In today's event, we are going to interview Gary and ask him a few questions. Professor Gary is the Vice Chancellor and Dean of the Faculty of Business and Law. So over to you, Gary. Could you please introduce yourself, your center of interest, career path, and all of this?
Okay, well, I'll just keep it, and you'll ask questions, no doubt, in between. But my name is Gary Packham. Yes, I'm Pro Vice Chancellor and Dean of the Faculty of Business and Law. I have been at ARU now just over 8 years. I joined as Deputy Dean for Research and Innovation and then took on the Pro Vice Chancellor role about 2 years after that. Prior to joining ARU, I was head of a Glamorgan Business School, University of South Wales. I worked for many years down in Wales, both at what was the University of Glamorgan, but became University of South Wales, and work at Cardiff University as well. My career path probably wasn't as traditional as some in academia. I got a bit fed up after A-levels and decided that I needed to go and work for a living, so I went into financial services. And about 5 years after that, got really frustrated working in financial services because I wasn't getting anywhere. So I decided to go back into academia, do my degree. I was fortunate enough after getting my degree to be offered a PhD scholarship looking at small business management and growth, and really didn't look back. So my professorship is not just a title of my role, it's a personal chair in enterprise entrepreneurship. I've published in many kind of facets of enterprise entrepreneurship over the years, and undertaken a number of projects both in the UK and internationally on the kind of economic development, policy, commercialisation, small business development and growth areas.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. So the first question we wanted to ask is, so obviously there comes a lot of uncertainty with situations such as the one now. So how did you adapt the university's strategy to COVID-19?
I think the important thing to kind of recognise is that sometimes you do have to kind of alter what you're doing, but strategy and the direction of the organisation, if you've kind of done it well, doesn't necessarily alter. Maybe the way that you do it and how you have to do it in the interim may have to change. And as a faculty, we're probably quite fortunate because we're moving towards a more kind of active curriculum, a new curriculum, which was bringing in this kind of mix of online and tutor and student workshops anyway. So some elements of what we've done were already planned, already in process. I think perhaps the speed and how we would have liked to done it in if things hadn't changed because of the pandemic, we would have done it a little bit more face-to-face, a little bit more interactive. It wouldn't have been so online. It would have been a much kind of equal blend of online and face-to-face. But as with any strategy, I mean, the university strategy is very clear. It's about transforming lives through innovative, inclusive, entrepreneurial education and research. That remains very much our mantra. It very much drives what we do and how we do it. A lot of what we're doing and continuing to do hasn't necessarily changed because of the pandemic, but equally we're very conscious of trying to make sure that we look after our students and make sure that your experience is as good as it can be, and that we support you in what is a very difficult time for many different people from different walks of life, and trying to respect that we're all living with something that's very much unprecedented and most of us haven't experienced before.
Okay, thank you very much. So as Vice Chancellor, you have to deal with a team of hundreds of academics and deliver to thousands of students all across campus and not on campus. So it must be quite stressful to balance this work-life balance. And since our podcast is all of this, how to stay at home and little tips on how to manage this work and personal life balance.
Tips. I think that with anything, it's very easy, especially in the current time, to lose sight of the fact that that you can and you should be giving yourself permission to have that balance. And it doesn't matter how, whatever your role in an organisation is, you should try and work, on achieving that kind of balance. So what I do personally is I try and carve out time for things that are not work related, whether that be in the evenings or first thing in the morning. It may even be at lunchtimes, but periods of the time where I do have a break from work, and especially at the moment, because it's very easy just to be in front of a screen from 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, is being quite disciplined about having those breaks, even if there are 15 minutes here or there. I do a lot of running in the evening at weekends. That is a very good way of thinking about the day, thinking about the next day, thinking about the next week, and also dealing with some of the frustrations that we all face during our working week. So my first piece of advice is you should always feel that you can, and you should be allowed. It's not about being allowed, but you should be giving yourself permission to take those breaks and find different ways of working that kind of fits into the way that your life is going, and fit around the kind of personal and professional. My second piece of advice is to really value your colleagues, value your team, make sure that they're doing well. I can't stress that the importance of having a good team around you and making sure that your staff and your people are okay. It's a really challenging time for lots of different people for different reasons. And as much as you need to give yourself permission, you need to make sure that others are also striking that balance, because ultimately those people are going to doing a lot of the work that needs to be done to make sure that you and your organisation is successful. So it's not just about your individual work balance, it's also about making sure that the people that you lead and manage are also achieving that.
It's really important that we also have the opportunity to just talk with each other. So that's why it's really important that we have, for example, the business society as well, because we all keep in touch during this challenging time, and then just talk to someone, because it's gonna get easier, and it's just seeing someone else in the same situation helps a lot. So as we already mentioned, being in a really international environment, universities, especially in the UK, all the students and also the staff are coming from different countries. How do you manage such a huge international team? What are your tricks that maybe you use on a daily basis?
It's about leading an international team. I'm very fortunate, I said earlier, that I have a really good team. And I see my job is not about managing them, it's about facilitating them and it's supporting them. They have the talents, and many of them are much more talented in what they do than I am. I have to recognise that I'm coordinating, I'm facilitating, and I'm supporting those people to do the best. If they do the best and they can feel empowered to do the best and feel that they have a degree of autonomy and trust to do that, the kind of outcomes and the outputs are much higher than if I was trying to manage them on a daily basis. So I think there is this kind of issue between leadership and management. There are going to be times that we need to manage things because things have gone wrong and we need to put things right. There are always going to be systems and processes that we need to adhere to, quality standards, all those kind of things. But on the whole, my view is that you need to celebrate the diversity of your team. The fact that we have got an international team, we've got an international staff base, but we've also got a really great international student base, is a real advantage because it gives us different perspectives. It challenges our ways of thinking and doing. And I think that really kind of provides and creates an environment where we can think about the future, challenge ways of doing things, and think about how we're going to change business and society for the good as we become better leaders, and as our students become graduates and go into management and leadership positions to change hopefully what is being done and how it's being done.
Yes, so we can see this diversity and diverse view that the faculty and the whole school has. So I wanted to touch upon that international aspect of the university. To reach out to all those international students all over the world, how can you show that the university will be a good place for them, because they have to leave their home and everything, and we can see that the student body is quite international?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to say it starts with the students that you have, and it's making sure that those students do have a good time and have a good experience, because those students are our best ambassadors when they go back to their own countries, to their own communities. And if they're saying good things about us, then that really helps kind of build our brand and our profile. But we do have a good network of alumni. We have a good network of organisations, schools, colleges, other universities, agents that we go and up until recently, we would have quite an international traveller agenda. I would spend probably 5 to 6 trips a year going to kind of key countries, whether that be China, India, Europe. Often it's about getting out there, talking to people, but also listening to what people want and how and trying to bring that back into the teams as well, and say, can we do this better? Can we improve this? Could we include this as well? And it's always about relationships. It's about relationships that you can demonstrate, that you can deliver upon. So it's not just about having a relationship for the sake of a relationship. It's about positive action as well. It's about saying that here's students that have had a good experience. These are the things that we've done to try and improve the experience. But also, as I said earlier, sometimes being very upfront and saying, well, that didn't quite work the way we wanted it. How can we work with our students? How can we work with our other stakeholders to put that right? And I think having a strong learning community, but also celebrating and not being afraid of the student voice is really important. So the student voice is becoming, and quite rightly, more and more important. And we certainly want to listen and learn from our students, but we also want to them to be part of that kind of co-creation, co-development, and develop that experience for future generations of students as well.
And also, for example, the International Week, the university leads and organizes every year. That's also like a really, really good opportunity for, I think, like all of us to get to know like new cultures and to just engage with the different students that maybe you haven't had the chance to talk with before. So as you mentioned, you try not to manage but lead the team. I think we all learned about the characteristics that a leader should have, but what do you think the key values should be for a leader, and also what do you look for in a potential new colleague?
Okay, so in terms of the values that leadership values, I think the first one is courage and confidence. I think that you need to have the courage to do things, and sometimes it's not to do the easy thing, but to do the right thing. I'm a strong believer in having integrity and having integrity as a leader. So saying what doing what you say you're going to do, and having that credibility to actually people trust what you're trying to achieve. I'm a big believer in innovation and enterprise. I think that in the current climate and the future, enterprise and entrepreneurial leadership is going to be really important. People that can calculate risks, identify opportunities, and take those opportunities for the good of the organisation, but more importantly for the good of business and society, are going to be really important. And finally, it's about transparency for me, is to make sure that you are being fair and you're being open about what you're doing and why you're doing it. In terms of people, I'm looking for people that want to make a difference. I really feel that people that are passionate and have a real purpose, and especially in education, it's a great career if you really want to and most people that go into this higher education want to make a difference, whether that be for education or for research. They want to do something so they can change something, they can make a difference, or they can help transform lives or communities. Obviously, I'm looking for people with the right knowledge and expertise to do the job. I'm looking at people that want to be part of a team and want to be part of that kind of journey and want to be on that journey. And therefore, someone or people that want really share the same kind of vision, values and objectives of your organisation or your faculty are also very important.
Yes, thank you. We can definitely see that when we look at the whole staff of the university and faculty, and not only with the academic staff, but also with the whole student engagement team. We receive lots of help with little projects such as the UBC, the Big Pitch, or even all the society work. And when you coming here, we can see that we're very supported as a student body to achieve whatever we want. And the whole staff is very passionate about the job. So that's what helps us as well to start new projects like this. So a lot of firms has said during this pandemic that that remote working was quite helpful and less stressful for employees, saved on costs. So they said that they would give the options to employees to continue remote working even after the world would be COVID-free. Are you thinking of doing anything like this for ARU? So to offer remote working to the staff and all the students, even after the world is COVID-free per se?
I think I refer back to an earlier answer when I said about we were changing our curriculum and our approach anyway. So there are elements of that we will retain. Things like the screencasts, spending more time in the classroom or in a workshop talking about the issue rather than just communicating that issue or transmitting that issue. You can do that. The idea, the world is full of YouTube and videos now. So whether you're coming in on the train or you're last thing at night, you can consume that content in different ways. What our role is to make sure that you understand that content and that you can utilise that content effectively for whatever purpose that is. So we already were doing that anyway. So we will continue aspects of that, but we won't be. I think it's fair to say that if we were to go back to whatever normality might be, there will be more of that kind of face-to-face interaction, because some of that interaction and some of the things that we'd like to do are better done in a face-to-face, in group work, all that kind of thing. That's not to say that we can't do it online and we can't do it effectively online, but there's sometimes a preference about how we do that. So I think that many of our staff have done that really well, but I think there will be a more balanced view as we kind of hopefully navigate our way out of this pandemic. There is a lot of flexibility already built into academic careers and the way that academics work. Increasingly, what we've learned is that we don't have to always have our professional service staff in the faculty all the time doing that we can provide that support remotely. Although when things go wrong or people have got questions, sometimes someone to speak to, or a face to speak to, or someone that you can pick up the phone to is quite important. So I think it depends, and I think we need to balance that correctly. But even before the pandemic, what I would say is that we were maybe with great foresight already talking to our university about creating a new space in Cambridge initially that was going to be a more agile working space, somewhere where there was more kind of community, more opportunity space, social spaces for staff and our students within that in that to come together and work more kind of flexibly and in a more agile way. So we were heading down that route anyway. I think that what's happened, as with many things, this pandemic has probably accelerated that thinking and allowed us to kind of get that going more quickly, although it's constraining us about how quickly we might be able to get back into that new office and fit out an office in that way. But a lot of the lessons and the positives from the way people have taken to remote working, we will want to retain those benefits. Equally, I think it's really important to say that some people have struggled with remote working. I don't think it suits everybody. I think some, because of caring responsibilities, because that isolation and that lack of socialisation, have found that quite difficult. So you have to accept that there are kind of balances, there are levels, and it's about getting the best from all your staff and recognising the benefits of different types of working. So it's not just all about remote working, it's about trying to get that balance, and it's also about supporting people through that journey.
Yeah, definitely. And then just like finding the balance is probably the most important thing, as you've also mentioned. So as you've already mentioned, you didn't really change the university's strategy, so the goals stayed the same even though this whole new situation came. But what about the leadership? How did you adapt your leadership in times of crisis?
I mean, that's a really good question, because I think it challenged our leadership in several ways. I think that it challenges the way that you communicate and what you see to be effective communication. It also challenges the way that how you undertake the well-being of your staff and students, and what you would do normally, you have to think of different ways of doing it. You've also got the challenges of making sure that people can work online and remotely, and that straightforward and simple as possible, because if you give or try and do too much too quickly, that can cause trouble. And even if you do think you've done it quite straightforward and simply, it's amazing how things don't always quite work out. So a lot of it is about being proactive to try and move yourself quickly, but also recognising that things are not always going to go to plan, and that you might have to rethink that plan or that particular response to what's happening. And it's about being trying to be as flexible as possible. It's trying to be as positive as continue to be positive as possible, and often, dare I say, it's about keeping your sense of humour, because things do challenge you, and you have to recognise that things are not always going to go right. They're not going to go completely to plan, and you kind of have to kind of accept that and not try and take on. You've got to kind of balance that out, as I've said earlier, and recognising that trying to focus in on the kind of key activities, not necessarily trying to do too much, really focusing on the kind of key must-do activities. So some elements of strategy, some elements of what we were trying to do, we probably kind of said, well, okay, we can put those on hold. Ultimately, it's about our students, it's about the student experience, trying to make the best of that, and other things we can probably put on hold for 6-12 months. Giving yourself permission to not always try and do everything all the time to 100%. Sometimes you have to recognise that you are being constrained, you are in a challenging situation, and accepting that you just need to sometimes focus on a fewer things, because that's what your students need and that's what your staff need as well.
So you mentioned effective communication as being quite important in these times, and I know that the university has communicated a lot to its students and the whole body of the university. And I am very interested in public relations, and over the pandemic, all the public statements and were at the center of all the news and conversations, and appeared quite important for the success of failure businesses during these challenging times. So I wanted to have your strategic point of view of how can public relations appear as a competitive advantage during this pandemic.
I think that public relations can be, obviously there's positive or proactive, and there's more the reactive side of that. And if you looked at the news at the moment, I think it's fair to say that students and universities are being painted or in a particular light. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's accurate. I think that you need to use positive kind of stories to counteract that. And students are a really important part of our economy, a very important part of our future and our social fabric. The whole thing around the pandemic and the outbreaks in certain universities, it's unfortunate, it's sad, but it's also about making sure that people know what we are doing to support students and what we and where things and where things have gone wrong is to sometimes press PR to accept that and say, right, okay, that's gone on, but this is what we're doing. So PR can have a really positive impact, both even if the initial PR or initial media might be negative. It's about how you respond to it. Equally, it's about making sure that it's not just about the pandemic. It's about all the wonderful things that our students and our staff are doing, whether that be research into finding vaccines, into testing. It might be to help lots of things that we're doing to support the local communities, local businesses. Also trying to facilitate things, and still kind of bring new ideas to the fore that we want to take forward in the future as well. So it's not just about the negative; it's also bringing forward the positive. And you say about competitive advantage, and that's quite an interesting thing. So I think your competitive advantage is not necessarily based on your PR, but your PR can really give you a marketing edge. It can really show that your organisation is really switched on. It's really focused. It's got a really strong strategy. It's doing all the right things in the right ways. Equally, if you get your PR wrong, it can really undermine a good strategy. So I don't necessarily think that PR drives competitive advantage, but I think it can really mediate or moderate it quite significantly.
We'll conclude the event. Thank you so much for your insight, Gary. Thank you for making yourself accessible and available to us. Just a side note.
Do you want me to? Thank you very much for inviting me. Hopefully, I've given you a reasonably honest and open view. Sometimes maybe a little bit kind of muddled, because I think as with anything, everything changes. But just to stress to everybody that we've talked a lot about leadership, but I want to just say that you as students, you have the opportunity to go and create wealth and create employment. So don't just think about working for somebody else. Think about shaping your own future and the future of others. You've got the capability. I want you to be enterprising. I want you to be entrepreneurial, but don't always think about working for an organisation. Be passionate, have purpose, and go and drive future industry, future businesses yourself as well. So I want to just leave you with that message.
So thank you so much to Gary for joining us. Thank you to Catherine for helping us organizing it. Thank you to everyone watching here today, the business committee and then the business society members. And thank you to the SU and everyone of the faculty for watching. Thank you so much. You can follow us on social media, the Business Society social media, and then Crushing Borders on YouTube and Instagram. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining. Bye.